Bug bounty is easy, is what we think when we first hear about it and we see thousands of dollars being awarded for not so complex bugs. But is it really? I'm not a person that started their cybersecurity career 20 years ago, and I didn't hack since primary school. I was a regular dude who studied computer science, started working as a pen tester, and 2 years ago I quit to do bug bounty and create content. I'm sharing with you details of my journey, and in this video I will tell you about my second year of bug bounty with precise number of reports and earnings. Enjoy! One day I logged into my WordPress website and I saw an alert 1. At first I thought it's some kind of joke by a plugin developer, but turned out that one of you tried an XSS payload in the search field on my website and it didn't work for you, but it did trigger the XSS on the backend. It was a 0-day in Monster Insights plugin used by over 3 million websites, which makes it one of the most popular WordPress plugins. A bug like this is great because not only you can report it to the developers of the plugin, but also to every single website that uses the plugin and has a bug bounty program, so we can get multiple bounties for one bug. And since this plugin was so popular, I knew it's worth thousands of dollars. I sort of wanted to find out who actually found it and let you know that you just found a bug, but it was just impossible to track who initiated this search on my website. So I decided to do it myself, and I collaborated with my friend David, who I knew does a lot of bug bounty automations, which by the way are now available as a product called VDoc. In total, we found 19 websites with bug bounty programs using this plugin, and we made $0 from it. The problem was that it was quite a complex blind XSS because it's triggered in a very specific functionality and also dependent on the analytics backend used. We just didn't get blind XSS pingbacks to XSS Hunter, and to be honest, I'm still not exactly sure why, but in hindsight, I should have spent more time using this plugin with different analytics backends to create a payload suitable for every single integration. One way or another, it was a huge disappointment because in theory, this bug affected 3 million websites and I couldn't even make $1 out of it. But it definitely made me hungry for more scalable 0 days like this. Later, I was hacking on Discourse, an open source forum, and among other bugs, I found an XSS which I knew I can report to many programs. First, myself, I found one vulnerable instance and I got $2,000 from it. It made me really happy and quite proud because it was the first case of a bounty for a scalable 0 day, and it was a decent reward of $2,000 as well. I also reached out to Nagli. He's one of the best hackers out there and he relies on automation. He found 2 more instances, so we filed 2 reports. One of them is in the new state since 10 months. And the other one is quite interesting because first Backcrowd triaged it, but then it was closed because of no CSP bypass. We were confused with Nagli because we only reported it to programs with no CSP in place since we didn't have a bypass. Turned out that they had planned to enable CSP anyway, even before they got our report, and they implemented it before Backcrowd triaging our report and before security team doing it. But we opened a support ticket on Backcrowd and they were quick to respond and resolve the situation, and we got $3.6 thousand of bounty for this report. So shout out to the Backcrowd team for doing a great job here, and to the program as well, because they resolved the situation, which was actually just an unfortunate timing situation. In total, I got $512 from the vendor, $2,000 from one instance, and then $3.6 thousand split in half for another one. And when collaborating Even though technically you only get 50% of the bounty, you are not actually losing anything. Because if you find a 0 day, what you should do is first, you should try to find all vulnerable instances yourself and report it to them by yourself. And only then, after you have no more ideas on how to detect more, then you go to a person like Nagli who does the automations and you ask them to find more instances. You are not losing anything because you wouldn't find those instances anyway, and the other person, of course, also benefits, so everyone is happy. So don't hesitate to contact someone that does automations when you find a scalable 0 day. For me, it was one of my goals, and after achieving it, I decided to switch things up a bit. I invested more time into learning CodeQL. It's not a regular bug bounty program, but I will not go into details here because I covered it in another video and in multiple articles in VBA Premium. My investment paid out really well because I got my highest bounty to date of $5,500 for a CodeQL query to detect arbitrary file write by zip-slip. And you may think that everything just goes according to plan for me, but it's not true. Later, I also found an authentication bypass in Mastodon. They don't have a bug bounty program, but I did it for the purpose of writing another CodeQL query. But because of some strange things happening with Ruby, I just couldn't make it work. I also hacked on many different regular bug bounty programs, but I couldn't stick to one for long enough. I also found an XSS in one of the Google's products. I got a nice catch and the report was triaged for a few weeks. However, when deciding the reward, they decided to reward me with $0. It was actually a decision I could understand. It was just quite painful that this decision was made so late when I was already expecting a bounty of 3K or something like this. Then there was another 0 day that I wanted to scale. I stumbled upon the NodeBB forum when doing one of the case studies. I found an XSS quite quickly, reported it to the vendor, and I started looking for vulnerable instances. I found one, and then I also collaborated with Michael Ness to detect more. One program closed it as informational, the other one resolved it, but without paying any bounty. There was, however, one bug crowd program, which I was really hopeful for. They were active and triaged the bug quickly. We collaborated and I gave them the monkey patch to fix the vulnerability before the official fix is released. I thought I will get a $1,500 payout from them. At this point, it was a few months after I came back to Poland after winter in Tenerife, and I just couldn't turn on the hacking mode again. At this point, I would welcome any 4-digit bounty to break this dry spell. But they only paid me $100, saying they usually don't pay for 0 days at all, but they wanted to reward me for a good collaboration. So, while it was a nice compliment to hear, I would rather hear curse words with 1.5k bounty. So it turned out that the $256 reward from the vendor was my highest bounty for the 0 day, so again, quite a lot of disappointment here. And in the bounty vlog 1 year ago, I complained how little time I spent on bug bounty, and I planned to change. And I did. But not for the better. I spent little time overall doing hacking, but even worse, I jumped between programs a lot. I didn't have the persistence. The persistence, which I think is the #1 thing that every single experienced hunter mentions in every single interview. Like, take a look at how many different programs I've tried this year, and the most time I spent on one is 40 hours, with a total of barely over 200 hours of hunting. So, in some sense, I am closing in on Tim Ferriss's 4-hour workweek. But jokes aside, remember that I log my time in a very specific way, and it doesn't make sense for you to compare yourself to my time, but it makes a lot of sense for me to compare myself year over year, and it is much less time than in the previous year. It's not easy making a video like this, basically admitting to a lot of procrastination and time wasting. In fact, my friend David, whom I mentioned before, had to sort of convince me to do it because I was like, maybe I shouldn't. But he reminded me that the goal of this series is to give you the real image, to tell you how it actually looks like, even if it's not a quick success story. My perspective also changed a lot since last year. Then I felt quite insecure about my income and I was very disappointed with my time management. But this year, I felt much more stability and I allowed myself to design the lifestyle that I want and simply said, enjoy. I traveled a lot. I spent over 100 days in Spain, Portugal and others, met dozens of great people and had lots of fun. And in the moments of bitching myself for not working more, I have to remind myself that that's what I quit my 9 to 5 for. Another complaint that I had to myself was that I spent too much time on the business side of things and not enough time hunting. But this also has changed a lot because since I started doing case studies in BBRE Premium, where I extract all the reports about the particular bug class and I do the analysis, since I started doing those, BBRE Premium really caught traction and is now at the moment where I could only live off that income. It takes a lot of pressure off my shoulders and I should probably also outsource more to other people because I do too much myself, but outsourcing is a difficult skill which I'm only learning. And you know what? Bug bounty may seem random at times, but it does reward good work in the long run. When I started hunting and I made $7,000 in 100 hours on the Stripe challenge, I thought to myself, if I can make $7,000 out of a bunch of mediums, what will happen when I find a 10 or 15k critical? And it did eventually happen. Apart, it wasn't 10 or 15k bug, and it happened in such a low time bounty-wise for me. I got $20,000 for a path traversal on a private program on Bugcrowd, and it wiped off completely any remaining pressure to find bugs and also showed me that there is no magic in those 5-digit payouts. So in total, I more than doubled the hourly rate in the second year compared to the first year, and I even increased the total income even though I had way fewer findings. So can you live off bug bounties? For me, there is absolutely no doubt that if I shut down YouTube and BBRE Premium today and I started focusing only on bug bounty, I would make a great living. The plan for the next year? I'd really love to go to a live hacking event. In fact, I think it would work quite well because I see that I'm just a horrible multitasker, and having to focus on a live hacking event target for a few weeks to then focus only on creating contents for a few weeks could work just well. And also, I should outsource more to have more time for hacking, and I should stop bitching myself for not working so much. I want to keep traveling and digital nomading and basically embrace my 20s because sometimes I feel like I'm too serious for my age. I also urge you to design a lifestyle that you want and not only blindly follow the masses or social pressure. I can tell you from my experience that either running a business or doing a bug bounty with unreliable income is not as scary as you might think.